A major new scandal has erupted around drug money laundering by the already infamous HSBC, formerly known as the Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corp. John Cruz, a former accountant manager of the New York branch of HSBC, amassed over 1,000 pages of evidence and more than 20 hours of taped conversations of bank officials, showing that the bank was laundering massive amounts of money, as large as $500,000 during some months. According to Cruz, this laundering was done through dummy accounts using fake federal tax ID numbers and other frauds on behalf of Mexico's drug cartels, which have been linked to at least 81 murders in the last months. I found many accounts through which hundreds of thousands of dollars were being flowed as a conduit on a monthly basis. HSBC is a criminal organization. It is a culture of crime, Cruz said in an interview. The fact that one of the world's biggest banks is involved in illicit money laundering is not quite news. But what is more significant is the timing of this expose. Cruz himself has made several attempts to publicize the case for several years, but a decision was made particularly now to bring the case to the forefront of the discussion. So the question is, why now? But to answer that question, we must first put this expose in the context of the highly volatile situation we are in today. As Mr. LaRouche stated last week, the whole dynamic of the strategic situation has shifted. With Russia not backing down in the face of a military buildup in Eastern Europe, an imminency of war under Obama is undeniable. Also, this week marked a new phase of the transatlantic economic breakdown, with major banks simply going flat, which on the other side created the whole new resurgence of the demand for Glass-Steagall internationally. On top of this, the Obama administration was already in deep trouble with the Fast and Furious operation in which the U.S. Department of Justice was said to be involved in weapon trafficking in Mexico. It was at this moment, when the entire economic system blowing apart, with the administration being discredited more than ever, that the HSBC story was brought to fore. This could not have come out in a worse moment for Obama, since preliminary reports of the case already suggest the role of government agencies such as the Drug Enforcement Administration in facilitating the money laundering. Barack Obama, whose main financier in 2008 was a world-famous narco promoter, George Soros, is not at all exempt from this allegation. Washington Insider, interviewed in the Osterman Report, reported earlier this year that Obama has laundered $300 million or even more in 2008, and that he is doing it again in 2012 campaign. With the investigation into the HSBC scandal, combined with the ongoing case of the Fast and Furious, a bigger bomb could explode at any moment. Nonetheless, what is at stake here is not merely greedy bankers and bad politicians, as many would like to fool themselves with. What's really at stake here is the whole oligarchical system. As Lyndon LaRouche and EIR publications have been reporting for decades, the oligarchical rule has been sustained by facilitating illicit drug, human, and weapon trafficking, and even the orchestration of war. HSBC, which directly traces its origin to the Opium War is merely a typification of such an oligarchical structure imposed on a global scale. The recent charge against Queen's Bank, Goats & Co. on a serious and systemic money laundering offense can only add further to the brutish history of the empire. And in this light, it is not just a coincidence that the country who has judoed the imperial drive for war so far has been the leading country who publicly exposed the systemic nature of this imperial narco operation. Already in November of last year, Viktor Ivanov, the director of Russia's Federal Drug Control Service, pointed out the fact that the money laundering is not just the isolated criminal activity of a handful of large banks. This symbiotic existence of the narcotic market and the financial bubble is built into the very nature of the international financial system itself. Ivanov then called for an US-Russian collaboration to combat what he characterized as the narco-trafficking, organized crime, and financial terrorism nexus. A similar voice was heard from the Russian Prime Minister Medvedev just yesterday at an international legal forum held in Moscow.
We need to act in unison against such modern global challenges as the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, international terrorism, organized transnational crime, drug trafficking, and the threat of natural and man-made disasters. We can achieve this only through the collective efforts of states based on undeviating respect for the supremacy of law.
It should be clear by now that to break mankind free from this narco-trafficking, organized crime, and financial terrorism nexus requires much more than Glass-Steagall. In fact, both Viktor Ivanov and Antonio Costa, former executive director of the UN Office of Drug Control, publicly stated that even though it is a necessary measure, Glass-Steagall will not work by itself.
To a certain extent, we are observing a revival of the logic of the Glass-Steagall Act adopted in the USA in 1933. However, hard restrictions to prevent criminal money attraction are required yet more. The key way to liquidate global drug trafficking is to reformat the existing economy and to shift to an open economy of development, where decisions are based on development projects and special purpose credits.
Therefore, what is required is not a piece of regulation, but rather a whole new economic platform on which humanity can exist free of the oligarchical shackle. That requirement, the Glass-Steagall credit system and NUAPA, has been put on the table clearly and squarely by Mr. LaRouche. Russia, who identified Mr. LaRouche as the only sane representative of the West, has already shown its readiness to collaborate with the United States on this platform. In a situation where the highly volatile variables, such as the current monetary system, war provocation, and political tension could bring about what most of you thought will never happen. As Mr. LaRouche stated, Obama could go at any moment. But to go down with the dying imperial system, or to live by implementing a solution prescribed by Mr. LaRouche, we must decide. We must decide not based on variables, but on the only constant value that exists in the gravest moment of history, our commitment to the future.